What's up, Chloe? Can you guys thank Chloe for helping us lead worship? And obviously the rest of the team too. I'm just picking on her because she happened to be up here while I was up here. And anything I can do to make it awkward for her, I was going to do. So thank you for letting me do that. Happy Super Bowl Sunday. I'm sure you're all really excited to watch today's baseball game. Go Sports. Wait, what? No, I'm just kidding, man. I hope you guys are really pumped about the Super Bowl, and I really hope that you get to eat a lot of food today. I looked up a stat, and did you know that on Super Bowl Sunday alone, stores that sell hot wings will sell more hot wings this weekend than essentially will add up to like 6 months worth of sales. Like it's nuts, the amount of hot wings. So from me to you, save the chickens, eat pizza. Don't eat any hot wings. People eating too much of those. I'm just playing. You can eat whatever you want. Have fun. Or if you want to go vegan, eat lettuce. Enjoy your Super Bowl parties, I'm sure. Listen, this morning, we're kicking off a brand new series. As you can see behind me, a new series called A New Heart. So we're going to be looking at a book of the Bible called Ezekiel. So if you need a Bible, put your hand up. We have some folks who are sitting here who are now getting up, who have come this morning with the anticipation that they would get to hand you a Bible. They walk in the door, our student servants, they pray together, and they look at each other and they say, man, I'm going to hand out more Bibles than you today. And it's a contest. So help your favorite student servant out and get a Bible from them so they have bragging rights going into the next week so that you can get your Bible. But as they're doing that, we've got a new series, A New Heart, and we're going to be looking at a man named Ezekiel, not a character from the Bible. Remember, we've said that for a while now, right? We want to stop calling them characters from the Bible because it kind of translates to us, maybe subconsciously, that they're not real people. This is a real person. And let's be really honest for a moment, right? And I'm going to say something that you're like, I don't think a pastor would say that, but I'm going to say it to you. Let's be really, really honest. Some of us in the room, if we were to be asked, right, and really put to it, we'd be like, I did not know there was a book in the Bible called Ezekiel, right? You're like, wait, for real? You would just think, like when I was at your age and stage of life, I'll be honest with you, I even grew up in church. I went to Awana. I did the sword drills. I cheated. I put my finger in the Bible, right, in like 3 different places and then cheat. You know what I'm talking about? Some of you, you're like, yeah, you know what I'm talking about. When I was your age, when they told me, hey, they would say names of books in the Bible because I didn't have them memorized, I would take a stab. My thought was this, that sounds like a really old guy's name. So yeah, that's probably a book in the Bible, right? And be honest, some of you, you're like, Ezekiel? Sure, I thought I heard that in there once. I don't know if that's the name of a guy who churns his own butter or if that's the name of a book in the Bible. It's the name of a book in the Bible. And it's a man that we very rarely teach on for a number of different reasons. I'm going to let you in on a few secrets, a few pastor secrets that we don't like to share often because, right, I want you to know that I went to seminary and I know what I'm talking about, right? Like I can read this backwards and forwards in its original language and all this stuff. You want to know why we don't talk about Ezekiel? I'm going to be honest with you. Because we don't study Ezekiel very often. And here's why. You will look, this man, he was a prophet. He was a priest. He was also a prophet. And this man, Ezekiel, he was a young man at the time this would have taken place. He was probably around 30, even mid-30s. So basically, he was me, basically like my age, right? So if you can picture the age of this man, because sometimes we hear prophets and we think, oh, probably like a really old guy who looked like he was a character out of Star Wars. Like, don't picture like Obi-Wan Kenobi walking through like with a light. No, like this was a young man. Right? Like this was a young man. And honestly, these prophets will read stories like this in the Bible, and there's visions in them of like, man, that's a crazy like angel thing that was breathing fire or had wings, and there was like, and we're kind of like, I don't know. There's a lot of like apocalyptic type verbiage in there and post-apocalyptic foreshadowing, and we're kind of just, we read these, and we're kind of just like, I have no idea what's happening. I mean, some of the things that Ezekiel talks about can be tagged as like messages of doom. And let's be honest. Like when you crack open your Bible in the morning, or you pull out your phone and you look at the Bible app, if there are, options, right, for daily devotions, you're not clicking on the ones that's like, here's your daily dose of doom. Have a great day with Jesus. Like, you're not doing that. You know what I'm saying? And we approach books like this of the Bible so scarcely sometimes, and the reason for that is it's super hard for us to understand. Like, I'll tell you right now, I did the seminary thing, I studied, and there are elements of books like this that I'm kind of like, God, this is where that trust thing comes in, because I'm like, what is happening here, right? And so what we're going to do is we're going to spend the next 6 weeks kind of going, this kind of big rocks idea of what is in Ezekiel. Because you can get in this and you can start getting lost, and there's flashes of lightning coming down from in these visions, and you're like, what? Like, okay, he's talking about the tongue being stuck to the roof of his mouth and not being able to speak unless it's to say something of God, and you're kind of just like, wait, what? You know, I mean, like our son last night, I gave him some peanut butter, and he was like, Dad, I can't eat too much peanut butter because it makes me feel like it's stuck to the roof of my mouth and I need more water, right? Like, and I immediately was like, hey, Ezekiel, right? Because I'm a pastor, Dad, so I go there, right? Instead of like a normal person who thinks of a normal thing, I think of a Bible story, right? Like that's my life. But for us, we're going to look at the big rocks ideas, basically, of kind of this book of Ezekiel, because our banner verse, it's not on the screen, and you don't have to go there, but our banner verse is more toward the end of the book. In chapter 36, it's God giving a message to Ezekiel, and that's essentially what would happen with these prophets, right? And we'll unpack this in a minute, and we'll go through this together, and we're going to learn some things about this man named Ezekiel that most of us probably didn't know, and we're going to see how we can connect with this story in a way that maybe we haven't in the past, and we're going to be journeying through that over the next 6 weeks. But essentially a prophet, right, would get a word from God to give to the people of God. That's essentially what his job was. And so God essentially tells him in our banner verse, he says, he's giving this to the people of Israel, right, the people of God. He says, I will give you a new heart and put a new spirit in you. I will remove from you your heart of stone and give you a heart of flesh. Now, we know that the heart pumps blood to our bodies, right? Like the heart is vital for life. The heart pumps blood, so our body has oxygen, we can breathe, our organs can function, everything gets what it needs, right? Because to-do. You know exactly what I'm talking about. Sometimes maybe if you run real fast, maybe you go to gym class and you decide not to say that you hurt your toe and actually run the mile that day, and you get to the end of it, you're like, right? It gets really fast, right? Or maybe that special someone walks by you in the hall at school and you're kind of like, you know exactly what I'm talking about, right? You know exactly what I'm talking about. Your heart pumps life to your body. And so it's interesting, God, our banner verse, right, is like, listen, I'm going to give you I'll put a new heart in you. Basically, what God is saying, I'm giving you new life in me. I'm giving you new life in me. I'm going to put my spirit in you. It's a funny word that we don't say a lot in regular conversations, but this word spirit comes up a lot in the Bible, right? I mean, think about it. It's probably been, other than talking about school spirit, most of us don't use the word spirit in conversation. Like, when's the last time you were just with friends and you looked at them across the lunch table and you're like, man, I love the spirit in which you eat those Doritos. Like, you don't talk like that. Like, we don't, you know what I'm saying? But it's such a normal word in the Bible. It pops up a lot of places. And one of the places it pops up is Jesus himself. In the Gospel of John, before he goes to be crucified, he sits down with the guys that we call the disciples, right? His tribe of guys that he was going to build the church on, right? And he says, listen, there's one coming, there's a spirit coming when I leave that I will leave me with you in my spirit. It's what you and I would know as the Holy Spirit, this guidance, this counselor, this challenge, this voice, right? This Jesus with us as Jesus would be crucified and then obviously ascend back to heaven, right? And so there's no coincidence, right? The Bible is not just some thrown together library of books that just happens to add up, right? We're talking thousands of years that it was written by over 40 different authors from all different walks of life and backgrounds. And look, here we are in a book of the Bible called Ezekiel, and God's saying, I'm going to put a new spirit in you, and oh, well, I'll be darned if Jesus didn't talk about the same thing when he was going away to be crucified. The reason I bring that up in our banner verse for this season is this. What we are going to learn from Ezekiel is so much more profound than what we will get if we just kind of fly over and just say, okay, Ezekiel had some visions. The people of God kind of made some mistakes, so he had to give this. There's so much more that we can connect with. So much more that we can connect with. Because when you choose to follow Jesus, you choose to believe Jesus is who he says he is, to submit to his priorities and his character, God puts a new heart in you. Are you tracking? New life, new purpose, new meaning you no longer see things the way you usually see things, that when you submit to his way, you start to see things the way God sees things. And so that's essentially what Ezekiel is going to be, telling us as we read this story, right, together. But so if you have your Bible, we'll have it on the screen as well. We're just going to jump off right in Ezekiel 1. And I'm going to give you this kind of story of this initial vision that Ezekiel had. And we're going to unpack some things from this that are a little basic but super profound for our lives. And here's what it is. It says, on July 31st of my 13th year, that's their approximation, basically around that time, while I was with the Judean exiles beside the Kibar River in Babylon. We're going to come back to that in a minute, because that's one of those sentences that we will read that has so much involved in it that most of us would read right over and not even pay any attention to. The heavens were opened, and I saw visions of God. Now let's just stop right there. Can you imagine just chilling one day? Just hanging out, right? Like, oh, man, maybe you didn't go to movie night, so you're like, ooh, I want to watch Remember the Titans. I sit at home, I put on Disney Plus, I'm watching Remember the Titans, and all of a sudden, the heavens open up, and you see visions of God. You'd be like, you don't know what to do with that. Like, but we read it, right? We read it in the Bible, and we're just kind of like, oh, that's cool, man. That's cool, yeah. I bet it was like the fireworks show at Disneyland. I bet it was cool, right? This is insane. Like, we don't think that. This man is sitting there, and it says this vision he got from God. The heavens opened up, and I saw visions from God. Try to at least grasp a salt grain size grasp of what on earth is going on here, because God is about to deliver a word to this man and reveal to him parts of his glory that most of us have never experienced, right? This is incredible. And it says, I saw visions of God. This happened during the 5th year. He's basically recording it during our captivity. And we'll come back to that in a second. And it says, he felt the hand of the Lord take hold of him. And as I looked, I saw a great storm coming from the north, and driving before it a huge cloud that flashed with lightning and shone with brilliant light. At this point, if I'm Ezekiel, I'm starting to get really nervous. I'm also starting to wonder if anyone around me is seeing this too. You know what I'm talking about? You ever been in one of those situations? Maybe you're out with friends and like you see something. You're like, did y'all see that? Did y'all see that? And none of them saw that. And they're all looking at you like, sure, yeah, we saw it. Y'all want to go somewhere else? Away from them? Right? Like, you know what I'm talking about. But can you imagine being him? I mean, this is incredible. There was a fire inside the cloud, and in the middle of the fire glowed something like a gleaming amber. From the center of the cloud came 4 living beings that looked human. At this point, you're like, I mean, we read this, right? We just read this, and we veggie-tail this in our brains, right? We're just kind of like, that's cool, man. Yeah. God put on a firework display with lightning, and that's rad. He brought a storm to Ezekiel, but think there's going to be so much more to this. There's going to be so much more to this. It says, except that each had 4 faces. Say what? 4 things that looked like human beings, but each of them had 4 faces. At this point, you're like, what did you eat for dinner, man? Like, that's what? I mean, really think about this. And 4 wings, their legs were straight, and their feet had hooves like those of a calf, and shone like burnished bronze. Under each of their 4 wings, I could see human hands. So each of the 4 beings have 4 faces and 4 wings, the wings of each being touched, the wings of being by the ones they were beside, like basically all touching. Each one moves straight forward in any direction without turning around. Each had a human face in the front, the face of a lion on the right side, the face of an ox on the left side, the face of an eagle at the back. Each had 2 pairs of outstretched wings. One pair stretched out to touch the wings of the living beings on either side of it, and the other pair covered its body. They went in whatever direction the Spirit chose, and they moved straight forward in any direction without turning around. The living beings looked like bright coals of fire or brilliant torches, and lightning seemed to flash back and forth among them. And the living beings darted to and fro like flashes of lightning. I want to give you guys just a quick word that I hope will help us as we approach worship moving forward, that really doesn't have anything else to do with where I'm going in our conversation this morning, but just a quick word. Understand that Ezekiel is sitting there getting this vision from God, and this, what he's seeing, is not God, right? These are things worshiping God, basically like angel-type beings, right, that you and I would understand. Understand how incredibly brilliant, terrifying, awe-inspiring that is, and they worship God 24/7. So the next time you and I kick up into a song, right, and the band starts up and we start singing, I want you to think in a new way of thinking. Almost from a new heart, from a new posture, right? As we look into worship, we are worshiping the God of the universe. We're not just worshiping the God of San Diego, California. We're not just worshiping the God of America. We're just not just worshiping the God of the 21st century. We are worshiping the God of the universe, who was before was. And his glory is so much we can't even handle it. We can't even handle it because our souls are imperfect and will not be perfect until we are in heaven with Jesus, and then we'll be able to be with him, because at this stage of our lives, at this phase, in this form, right, we cannot handle that. That God is the God we worship. There's my little diatribe on worship that I want us to know, because we don't. We don't, and I did it too, right? I sing songs, I'm like, that's got a cool beat. Oh, that melody pulls me in. Oh, this is fun. I don't know this song. I'm just going to sit here. I don't sing very well. I don't want anybody to hear me. Oh, I ate something nasty for breakfast. I don't want to open my mouth. I don't want somebody to smell that next to me or whatever. Like, oh, no, I don't do this. Or it's just like, singing's lame, whatever. Let me explain something to you. Let me explain something to you. Let me explain something to you. God is still God, whether or not you sing. God is still God, whether or not you raise your hands. But I'm going to tell you right now, God deserves every single thing we can bring to worship him. That is how we should approach worship. Now, that was free. That's not a part of the conversation this morning. But we're going to dive back in, and I'm going to give you some context about this man named Ezekiel. Now, most of us, we've heard of Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, right? You know what I'm talking about. Daniel, right, had to run in with the king. He went and prayed. The king was like, I'm going to get tricked into outlawing this whole thing, that you can't worship anybody but me. Shady guys went behind Daniel's back and said, hey, this Daniel guy's praying and you really like him, but I'm just saying he broke the law. Well, he's got to be thrown in the den with the lions. Okay, do it. Daniel hangs out there with the lions. They played spicy Uno, whatever they did, I don't know. But they popped the gate open right on the lion's den, and Daniel's like, oh, what's up? Right? Daniel, you know this, right? Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, right? You've seen VeggieTales, right? They didn't want to eat the chocolate bunnies, right? You know what I'm talking about, right? They did not bow down to anybody but God. And they're like, put them in the furnace, crank it up extra hot, extra hot, extra hot, extra hot. Put them in there. They're like, the guys are looking in like, there was 3. There looks like 4. How did they birth one? Like, there's 3, now there's 4. They come out not only were they not burned, they didn't even smell like smoke. They smelled like they walked through a Bath and Body Works, right? Like they didn't smell like smoke. That this God that I'm talking about worshiping did that in the lives of these men who followed him. So we know who these people are. We don't often associate them with Ezekiel, but let me give you some context here. The people of God, we just talked about the story of Moses passing the baton to Joshua, right? And leading his people to the promised land. But in that, we were reminded that the Old Testament of the Bible is very largely made up of the story of the people of God who were faithful to God, then unfaithful to God, then faithful to God, then unfaithful to God. It is a roller coaster of faithfulness and a lack of faith. And it was God's faithfulness to his people no matter what, right? We see this in the Old Testament, but through that, the people of God would be taken captive. They would be taken as refugees in cities, in places, in cultures, in communities that they were not from. Some of them would be born into foreign communities. They would be born into places that they didn't understand, that they had customs. They worshiped different gods. They had different ways of doing things, and they were not necessarily free as they would have been. They were taken captive. And there was an empire, the Babylonian Empire. And these people, right, the Babylonians, would capture them. They would find a way to kind of expand. They would capture them. And essentially what would happen is there would be a few waves of kind of these Israelite refugees, right, in the tribes of Israel that would be spread out. And they would take them captive. Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, they came with one wave. Ezekiel came with another wave. He was a part of this group, probably the largest wave at the time that would have come in. So Ezekiel, you have to understand what's going on. Here's the man. He's a young man, probably about my age, and where he is at in life, he's kind of born into a priestly family, so he kind of knew like what his job was. Like maybe you have the family business, right? Ezekiel would have been born into this. He would have heard the stories of Daniel. He would have heard the stories of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. In fact, he probably had some degree of separation where he would have known somebody who knew somebody who knew somebody whose cousin knew somebody, right? You understand what I'm saying? Like this man, as he became this priest, which by law he would have had to have done by 30. So that's why I'm saying, like, most of the time when he's saying, like, oh, it was during the 5th year of this, like, these kind of signs point to the fact that he was around maybe 30, 35 at the time. Here is a young man who would have still been sorting things out, because I'm going to let you in on a little secret. At my age, I may be a dad. I may have been married for as long as you guys have been alive on this earth. But I'm going to tell you right now, if there's one thing I'm learning, is that I don't know much. I need to continue learning. And so this man, imagine his headspace. He would have been taken captive. He would have been brought in. And in fact, at this point, it says he was with other Judean exiles beside the river. Basically, there were these two places, and there was kind of this riverine type of path that certain boats could get through. Not very large, but it would kind of lead outside, and they would have to post up out there as refugees. Think of it almost as there was kind of this refugee camp outside, and he's hanging out with all the other exiles of kind of Israelite people, where the Babylonians were over here, and they were just taking part of being taken captive. So here's Ezekiel in this moment, knowing, right? He'd heard the stories. You and I get this on such a real level, we don't even understand. You've heard the stories of, think about it, right? Well, I remember, like maybe your parents or your grandparents. Oh man, you should have seen America in the 60s. It was crazy. Peace, right? You should have known, right? Or maybe like, then other people are like, 60s were nothing. Can I tell you about the 70s? We literally learned a dance called the disco, right? Like, come on, man. Like, oh man. Then some people are like, 80s. 80s is when we really discovered processed foods and what a microwave could do, right? And like you hear stories of like, and then like 90s. For you guys, the 90s are coming back, and you're like, man, the 90s were fresh. I'm going to tell you right now, as a kid who grew up in the 90s were hard, because if you didn't dress for success in the 90s, you got made fun of hard. You did not get a girlfriend. You got blasted hard. I'm telling you that. What I'm saying is you understand on a basic level more than you think what it would have been like to have heard this is what it was. This is what it was. This is what it was. Oh, but Daniel. Oh, man. And then Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego. Oh, yes. Oh, and then you would have heard even more stories. Have been like, remember those 10 Commandment things? Oh, that Moses story, that's crazy. Joshua, he would have known because he would have been a part of these people, and he would have been taken captive in waves just like some others. And you guys understand that on a basic level. No, you weren't there, but you understand what it's like to be able to look back and hear stories of this. And in the Old Testament, it's the people of God being faithful to God one minute, forgetting where the blessings came from next, and being unfaithful to God the next minute. They had the shortest attention span, the worst memory, short-term memory loss. They were all finding dories, right? They were all dories. God, thank you for delivering us from Pharaoh and getting us out of Egypt. And then next thing you know, they're like, God, we hate this wilderness. You don't do anything good for us. And you're like, for real? And then God's like, okay, here's some food. God, this is miraculous food just showed up out of nowhere, right? This is so cool. Then next day they're like, I hate this food. God, I'm gluten-free. I don't like this. This is what would happen. So God would send, he would raise up in this community, and specifically in this story, a man potentially in his 30s, growing up, had just become a priest, was now being tapped as a prophet, and God is saying, I will give a word to you for you to give to my people so that they would know more of my glory and my purpose. Can you imagine the weight that would be on this man, Ezekiel, as he's hanging out here with his buddies? He's in this exile. He's in this space. And this is when God chooses to tap him on the shoulder and say, you will now take a message from me to the people. And I'm going to be blunt with all y'all in the room. That sounds really cool. But be careful what you ask for with God. Because God may just give you what you ask for. Meaning this. There are some dangerous prayers that we will pray like this. God, please mold me and shape me into being more like you. You prayed that before? You heard it before? Maybe somebody prayed it from stage, and you were like, that's cool. I like that. Be molded and shaped like Play-Doh. Right? You think about that, right? Be molded and shaped. You know what that means? You know what that means? That means God's going to look at you and say, great, it's time to die to yourself every day and surrender to my way. And BT Dub, that's not easy because you're a person, you're human, and it is in your nature to defy the very perfectness and righteousness of my holiness because you don't measure up. So you're going to struggle with that, and that's going to be hard. And some of you know exactly what I'm talking about because I've had conversations with you. You've had conversations with your friend. Oh, God, I want to be more like you. I want to be more like you. And then what happens? 2 weeks later, I keep struggling with the same thing. Man, it's hard. God, I want to be more like you. And oh, I just broke up with someone. Man, it's hard. God, I want to be more like you. My friends backstabbed me. You don't know. You don't know. God, I want to grow in you. I want you to teach me what it means to trust in you. And then what happens? Mom and dad sit you down and say, hey, we got some news, and this family's not going to be the same kind of family anymore. You know what I'm talking about. God does something to us that we fail to see because we're not looking for it. And that is where I want to live this morning. And the big idea of our conversation, when Ezekiel, from this story, God is saying, I'm going to give you a new heart. I'm going to put a new spirit in you. This hard heart that says, God, you're on the priority list, but you kind of in the middle, right? Like, yes, okay, yes. Jesus, God, love it. Sunday mornings are great. If I can get to a Wednesday, that's cool too. But I still got, you don't know, like Apple just came out with DV God. You don't know, like, oh, but sports God. Oh, but my Instagram followers, God. Oh, but no, my Snapchats or whatever. Oh, but my TikTok game got to be strong, right? And then God, right? We do this, and God's like, no. Don't be like the Israelite people. Manna's great, love it, thank you for providing. Oh, God, sorry, I don't do that. I'm a pescatarian this year. Or whatever it is, right? Don't do that. He's saying, I'm going to put a new heart in you, a new spirit in you, and this hard heart, this heart that is not open to surrendering to my ways and my priorities, that's got to go. That's got to go, because that leads to nothingness. Because God knows better. God knows better. Look at Ezekiel, and we're going to talk more about this in the next few weeks. But today, look at Ezekiel and where he was when God gave him his initial vision. Look, he's hanging out. What does it say? Well, I was with the Judean exiles beside the Kebar River in Babylon. I'm in a foreign place with foreign people, exiled in a refugee camp because my people were taken captive, because my people found a way to mess it up, even though God was always faithful, God was always faithful, God was always faithful. And I'm in this place, away from things, probably a little bit scared, very much unsure of what was going on. I've got this job to care for my people as a priest, and now I'm becoming a prophet. And here's what happens. God speaks to Ezekiel at one of the lowest moments of his life. You thought about that? See, maybe you're experiencing what you're experiencing right now in your journey with Jesus because God's giving you the old Bueller. He's giving you the old, you hearing this? Hello, new heart. And you're kind of like, hard heart. You don't know, God. You don't know. But my parents just went through this. But I just lost this friend to this. You don't know, God. I have a friend who has cancer. You don't understand. No, God, you don't understand. I can't climb out of this. Or some of you are just like, God, you all right. And God's like, I made everything, including you, and I know better. And I want you to experience better. So hello. Maybe God has you where you are because he's trying to speak to you. Because God had Ezekiel in basically what would amount to a refugee camp with Judean exiles sitting out there, probably full of unsurety and not knowing what was going to happen, as he found himself in this sliver of history that had such variety and roller coasterness. And here's Ezekiel in his 30s, right, thinking, what on earth? And God says, boom, tag, you're it. Now I'm going to give you a message, and you're going to give this message to the people because I'm going to put a new heart in you. I'm going to give you new life. So the question for us is this. God is always speaking. You got it on your phone. God is always speaking. Did you see the sun come up this morning? Yeah, he made that. Been to the ocean recently? He made that too. And everything in it. Looked in the mirror recently? He made that too. And you're his most precious creation. God is always speaking, but are we listening? And not just that. It's not just are we listening, because it'd be easy for me, right? Because that's, there's my tweetable one-liner, and then let me drop the mic and get off stage, right? God is always speaking, but are we listening? Cool, somebody give me a neat filter, and let's put that on Instagram TV, and that's a cool message clip. No, here's why I'm saying that. Don't miss something that we always miss. God is always speaking, but are we listening? But the reason a lot of times we don't listen is because we're not even trying. We have our AirPods in, away from everybody, not wanting to listen. We don't want to listen because what God has to say sometimes is terribly dangerous for us, because you know what it says? Here's what it says. Listen, I know you struggle with this. I know because you're a teenager, your hormones are going nutso. And I know you like to look at certain pictures on Instagram. I know you like to talk to certain people a certain way. I know that maybe you think love comes in the form of A, B, C, and D, but it doesn't. So I'm going to need you to know that I'll offer better. And you're like, yeah, but that's scary because I don't really understand that. And I can see all this in front of me. And this makes me comfortable. And he's like, That's not the new heart I want for you. See, new heart equals new life. And this life I'm going to give you is better than the one you could ever conjure up. See, some of us, we don't want to look. We don't want to look. We don't want to try to listen because we're scared of what he's going to say. Maybe something bad happened to you. You're like, no, God, we need to take a break because you clearly don't know what you're doing because my life is falling apart. And he's looking at you. He's like, you can't see it right now. You can't see it. You can't see it. You can't see it. But I love you and I have something for you. I have a purpose for you. I have a purpose for you. It's right here. It's right here. I'm speaking. Are you listening? Are you even looking to listen? Are you looking to listen? So for us, in our week 1 conversation, I told you, man, we're going there because this is a book we don't usually read. And we're going to read some other things in here that are going to have some real practical application. And we'll look at some stuff. And some of you are like, Ezekiel, I didn't know he would have known stories of like Daniel, Shadrach. And, oh, that's really cool. He was a priest but prophet. And there's some other crazy things, right? I didn't know I could relate in this way, maybe. But for those of us this morning, the kind of big idea is this. Right now in this season of life, are you looking for what God will be saying? You know, it's so cheesy, right? Because as a pastor, I have to say this, right? I'm contractually obligated, right, to tell you to read your Bible, right? But in all seriousness, are you looking for what God is saying? You know, one of the things I ask people all the time is they come to me, Pastor Scott, man, what's going on? Oh, man, life is falling apart. I don't know what to do. I feel like I'm in a camp with some other people, unsure. Feels like I'm in a foreign place. I don't know where. I've never been through this before. I'm really struggling with these relationships. I feel like I'm stuck in my walk with Jesus because everywhere I go, I tried to date this person and it didn't make me happy. It didn't work out. Then I tried to date this person and I found out they weren't really good and I made some mistakes there and then that didn't work out. And then I got like 50 new Instagram followers and I thought, yes, I'm going to be good. And then I realized, no, I'm not. And then I went to this party because I was like, well, if I do this thing, people will like me, right? And I didn't. And I look at him and I'm like, okay, when's the last time you looked at what God said? What do you mean? When's the last time you read your Bible? Yeah. What? Well, I mean, I got that thing on my phone that gives me like a daily verse. When's the last time you looked at it? I saw the push notification. Oh, okay. When's the last time you prayed? You know what I get? No joke. You know what I get? Has it come to that? Most of the time, we don't hear what God is saying because we're not even trying to listen. We're not even trying to listen. Now, don't get it twisted. God can speak whenever he wants to, and he'll get a hold of you however he wants to. But if we want to experience this new life from this new heart, we need to be looking at what God is saying and practicing listening to what God is saying, because we say it all the time, right? It's a church thing. It's a Sunday school thing, right? Thy word is a lamp unto my feet. But think about it. If God's truth is new life, his word is light. And as a result, what he says lights our way. Because I'm going to tell you right now, at 36 years on this earth, the flashlight on your phone is not strong enough to help get you through life. But this light will lead the way. So my encouragement for all of us and my challenge for all of us, not from me to you, for we, right, is this. Are we looking at what God is saying? Are we trying to listen to what God is saying? Because I'm going to tell you right now, his glory never goes away and he never stops speaking. It's usually we just stopped listening. So are you going to try to listen to God? Next week, I'm going to tell you some ways we can do that and some avenues that we can get that and how important that is for our lives, not just for us, but for others. But again, as we think about this glory of God, I want to encourage you, even as we pray and the band comes, I want to encourage you guys to mull that over. Almost like Austin said a few weeks ago, right? To mutter, to focus, to get it in you, to get it in you, to get it in you. This idea that we get to return praise to the God who gave us the very tutun, 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 that from this new heart we lift up the glory of God.